Myself and Gio have just finished recording our monthly player ratings video over on Patreon. We do a match-by-match one, but then every month we aggregate them all and give out our player of the month, basically. It very much shines a light on who's played well and, of course, who's played badly. What it makes you do is statistically, which myself and Gio are not great at, maybe, statistically assess how each player's done each month. And you just look at everybody individually. Anyway, during the course of that, I'm not going to put spoilers on here in terms of who was best and who wasn't. However, our focus was brought sharply upon Gianluca Scamacca. And the Scamacca one is important because he didn't really feature very much within the last bunch of games that we appraised, which is from Arsenal, which is basically back from the World Cup onwards up to Newcastle. And he didn't feature very much. Clearly, he's had an injury. But as you start getting into these things, you start to discuss individual players and it starts to prompt a few more thoughts. When we looked at it, so I don't think it would be revealing too much to suggest that Agurd has scored very well. So I started to look at David Moyes' signings and you look at Agurd and you think, OK, he's done much better than expected. And you know what? Had we had Agurd all season, then I'm pretty sure that West Ham wouldn't be as low down as we are in the league. But when you look at him, you see there is a player, a signing, who's doing really well, who's adapted to the Premier League, just keeps getting better. I would also argue that Emerson seems to be getting better. Now, Emerson has not had to do the same kind of adapting to the Premier League, because obviously he played for Chelsea. Yes, he was out on loan to Olympique Lyonnais, but he's not going to find the Premier League a surprise, let's put it that way. Cornet, well, we can't say, can we? We still don't really know what's going on with Maxwell Cornet at the moment. So you can't appraise him at all. Look at Thilo Kehrer. It ain't quite so good, but look, we'll wait and see. Started really well, then let's be perfectly honest with each other. He's been a bit crap, hasn't he? So you park that for a while. But the big money signing in terms of Paqueta, it looks like he's getting there. It looks like he's improving. Moyes, as I mentioned before last week, made those strange comments where it appeared to be a bit of a light bulb moment for him, where he suddenly realised what position Paqueta played in. If you look at the interview, Moyes is very much saying, OK, well, we had it in mind that Paqueta would sort of play number 10 for us, but I watched him in the World Cup and he seems to play as a number 8. So we're going to start playing him there. I paraphrase, but more or less, those were David Moyes' words, which obviously leads to the question, why did you not know this before? Why has it become so evident and so apparent now? Anyway, that doesn't matter. For whatever reason, even if it wasn't foresight, David Moyes has stumbled across what he believes to be Paqueta's best position and the position that he plays in the Brazilian team. And he's looked better, hasn't he? Paqueta's looked better. Against Newcastle, I felt it was a pivotal game. I felt that was as hurried and as frenetic as the Premier League gets. And he'd have learnt from it. Tiny little things like, OK, I can't dwell on the ball too much there. This league is full of fast players. They're going to be snapping at my heels. I've got to do better. I've got to be quicker. And I think we'll see an improved Paqueta because of it. In many respects, I think we're unlucky that we're playing two sort of heavyweights, if you like, in terms of Chelsea and Tottenham. But Paqueta looks to be improving, looks to be adapting. It's where it gets to Scamacca, which is obviously what I want to talk about in this video, where it becomes a little bit more fraught, I think, on this one. So Scamacca. So Scamacca has started his career in fits and starts, really. I certainly felt he played well in the European campaign in the Conference League. He did well. He scored some goals, managed to force his way into the team by his own performances in the Europa Conference League, but also by Mikel Antonio just wasn't in any sort of form at the start of the season. He played well on occasion in the league, most notably played really well against Wolves in the first game we played against them this season. And then it sort of tailed off a little bit. It's been interrupted by injury. Now, what you want to do, I think you've got to separate why it's happening and then just accept that it is happening. And when I say it, I mean it's not really worked out for him at West Ham yet. At best, it's been very, very patchy. There's been times when he's looked like an absolute beast, a world beater. There's been other times where he looks like he's not going to be able to be incorporated within the fabric of the team. Why is it happening? It may just be the wrong type of player in the wrong system. It may well be because he's used to playing alongside Raspadori and, be it both at a club and international level. Any number of things. Moyes can't get the best out of it. Whatever it is, I think we just got to leave that to one side at the moment. You could give it any number of mitigating factors to suggest why it's not working out. I just think you've got to accept thus far it's not really worked out, which is why I feel the remainder of the season is massively important for Scamacca, or I think he's going to be off. I think we'll lose him. I really do. Because whilst he might not work out and be a brilliant player over here for us, he's certainly still coveted over in Italy. And let's not forget, he's also played in Holland before as well. So I don't think it's the whole travelling aspect. Let's not forget that he chose us over Paris Saint-Germain. They wanted him. I think his reputation in Europe probably remains intact. But I think the reason it's important now is sort of... it's threefold. Number one is because of his own form. Number two is because of Michail Antonio. Michail Antonio, whilst he maybe hasn't hit the full goal-scoring form that we might have wanted from him, I think Antonio is fitter. He looks sharper. He looks more of a threat, doesn't he? He looks busy. He looks more interested, let's say, in that. Now, I don't know if he was playing for a move. I guess we'll never know. He was certainly quite happy to discuss it on the podcast that he does with Callum Wilson. But I think there's been an improvement. I think there's been an upturn. So I think that in itself makes it a little bit more difficult for Scamacca. Obviously, the other thing, the third and final thing, is Danny Ings. Danny Ings coming in. Now, you can look at the signing Danny Ings in a couple of ways. Firstly, it could be because we didn't have squad depth. David Moyes worried about injury, so we need to bring another body in. That's absolutely true. But actually, the what's the club? The Lorient FC Lorient president saying that West Ham absolutely did make a €25 million bid for Terem Moffi in the last window indicates that even with Ings in, Moyes was still going for it. Indicates that he's not entirely happy with Scamacca there. So I do think this run-in is incredibly important for Gianluca Scamacca. I think he either hits the goal trail or he's gone. And I think that's a massive shame. I really do. And I think had all the others not worked out, then we might have really been able to point the finger at this as being a terrible recruitment policy. But just maybe, let's say, and I've no faith in it, and I for all the reasons that I've described in the past, maybe, let's say that Maxwell Cornet does return back, if we can work out where he is and we can work out what's wrong with him. Let's say we heal him. We're going to heal him. We heal him. And he starts playing. Even if he plays half the games on the left wing, you'd look at it and you'd say, OK, that's turned out OK. Agurd certainly is. Paqueta's improving all the time. And, whatever. Kehrer, I think it's less of an issue. He was only 10 million, Thilo Kehrer. You start to then look at it and you think, OK, so a lot of these signings are starting to work out to varying degrees of success. You then look at Scamacca and you think, OK, this one hasn't. At that point, you think, by and large, it's the recruitment drive was OK. Maybe we've got to cut our losses on this player. So I do wonder if we can get the best out of him. I do think there's a natural solution there, which is, to play him in a front two alongside Danny Ings. I think they have enough differences to be able to complement each other with their opposite sort of playing characteristics, if you like. But then there is the reverse argument, which is, well, actually, if the team is playing well, if we're playing well in this back three, if Agurd's playing well, Ogbonna's come back, he's playing well, Paqueta's settling in, Rice looks in outstanding form, Bowen's back on the goal trail, if the team is then performing well, why would you change to a front two? Because then that's the tail wagging the dog, right? You're then changing to a front two just so as you can get Scamacca back in form. Well, actually, individually, getting Scamacca back in form ain't that important at the moment for West Ham. What is important is us getting into mid-table, basically. That's where it is at the moment. It doesn't really matter whether we do that with I don't care whether we get to mid-table with Scamacca scoring goals or someone else scoring goals. I actually don't care. But if it turns out the team is performing and crawling up to mid-table without the influence of Scamacca, then so be it. I just find it really interesting. I find it a pivotal point from now until the end of the season for Gianluca Scamacca. I find it even hard to make a case that he walks back into the team at any point. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm not going to make any predictions on this. I even find it hard to imagine a scenario in my mind of Danny Ings finding his way into the team. looks like a really... Doesn't look like a David Moyes signing to me, but it is. Clearly Moyes has chosen this player. I'm talking about Danny Ings here. But when I look at him, I think this is not a guy that's going to fit into his system. So in my mind's eye, I'm struggling to think of a set of circumstances, tactically I mean here. I think he'll play him. I think he'll come off the bench. But I'm struggling to see a set of circumstances where Danny Ings thrives at West Ham. This is going to prove really interesting because going back to the start of the video, I'm actually really starting to struggle to see a set of circumstances where Gianluca Scamacca thrives in this team.